certainly good to be with all of you this morning. Happy the presence of each one. In this morning's lesson, I'd like to continue with the series of lessons that we've been doing on the life of Christ, and looking at these events in chronological order in the Lord's earthly ministry and life. And in the lesson this morning, we want to look at the account about the Syro-Phoenician woman. Last month, we looked at Matthew chapter 15 and verses 1 through 20, where Jesus was dealing with an accusation on the part of the scribes and Pharisees that Jesus' disciples did not keep the traditions of the elders. And Jesus, of course, gave a thorough answer about their error in binding the teaching of men above the Word of God, and binding these things as matters to fear instead of God's Word. And Jesus withdrew after this to the land of the Gentiles. He drew over into Phoenicia, left the area of Galilee for a period of time in order to be alone with his disciples. So you have the beginning of what's called the retirement ministry of Jesus, where he's going to be in this area, Phoenicia, and then he's going to cross over into Decapolis on the other side of the Sea of Galilee and spend some time there. Goes up to Caesarea Philippi, north of Galilee. So he's got some time he wants to spend with his disciples to further instruct them. He's going to be beginning the last year of his ministry that leads to the cross. So they need some time to draw aside for private teaching. And here we're going to have an account of faith tested and faith answered. And another writer describes this section as the triumph of a mother's love. There is a woman that comes pleading for healing from demon possession for her daughter. So Jesus is looking for this rest and the instruction of his apostles. It says in Matthew 15, this account is in both Matthew and Mark. In Matthew 15:21, Jesus went away from there and withdrew into the district of Tyre and Sidon. And in Mark's account, Jesus got up and went away from there to the region of Tyre. So when we studied last month, he was down here at Capernaum and was having that controversy with the scribes and Pharisees that came up from Jerusalem. And you remember that this happened shortly after Jesus had fed the 5,000, and the zealots had tried to make him king. So he's gone through a couple of controversies, and he was seeking rest when he went over to feed the 5,000. So he's never had that rest yet. That got interrupted when all the people came out there and needed to be fed, and spend the day preaching and teaching to them. So now he withdraws out of the country and goes up here into Phoenicia along the coast. It's really not that far, 20-something miles, 30, 40 miles. It's not, it's a small country, so it's not a big, long distance to get out of Galilee there and to get into the region of Tyre and Sidon. So there's two occasions where Jesus was in foreign lands. Of course, his parents took him under the instruction of God down to the land of Egypt to get away from Herod. When he was trying to destroy all the babies there in Bethlehem and destroy the Christ at the beginning, they went and spent a period of time in Egypt. And then here on this occasion, he goes up into the land of Phoenicia. And he's been under attack by the zealots and had that controversy where a number of disciples quit following him because he wouldn't be an earthly king. And then you had the Pharisees. Now they're seeking his life and trying to accuse him because he won't follow the Jewish traditions that they bind as law on people. And he refuses that. So there's a big rift there, people that are rejecting him. And now he withdraws into Capernaum to get some calm for himself and rest for his disciples. You remember right before this, the disciples had been on a tour where he sent them out on a limited commission to preach all over Galilee to the Jews and to perform miracles. Then John the Baptist was beheaded, and they all came back to Jesus. And then they haven't had a rest since then. So he's still trying to get away, trying to give them some time to recuperate and to get further private instruction and teaching from Jesus about the things that are going to happen. He's going to go to Jerusalem. He's going to be put to death and rise the third day. And they need to have some understanding of those things. And also, by withdrawing from the scribes and Pharisees and these zealots, and from Herod, who is also recognizing Jesus' influence, it lets the controversies calm down. Jesus is on a timetable. He's going to die according to God's plan at the Passover, right? He can't. His hour has not yet come to be crucified. So you have to let things calm down a little bit. And he is seeking rest, as he was in Mark 6 and verse 31. Time to think, time to receive this private teaching, and draw some proper conclusions about the things that Jesus is saying and the controversies he's involved in. So he's in Phoenicia, Tyre, and Sidon region here. It's Gentile territory, but there were many Jews, of course, that lived in all of these areas as well. We know in the book of Acts, when the church starts, that up there in the same area, there were churches that Paul visited on his way to Jerusalem. So there are a lot of Jews also. In future, there'll be Christians living there that Jesus could also have some interaction with, even though he's in outside of Galilee. This Tyre and Sidon are famous ancient cities that we read about in the Old Testament. You can find prophecies about those cities in Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, where they talk about those great cities and how that they were going to be judged, and their history was revealed to those prophets about what would happen to them. These people were very famous sailors. When you study ancient Greek history and Roman history, you run across the outposts and colonies of these Phoenicians. It's thought that they sailed all the way out to England and maybe beyond back in the ancient world. They were the great sailors, and they had their headquarters there in Tyre and Sidon. So these great mariners, they were part of the Canaanites. When Israel came into the land, part of the Canaanites were these people that lived in Tyre and Sidon. So they had certainly were idolatrous people. When we think about Jezebel, she came from Tyre and introduced the worship of Baal in Ahab's kingdom of Israel. It caused all that trouble. So these people worship Baal there in that place. And here it's about April through October is when Jesus is doing this retirement ministry. So sometime around the time of April, he goes up into this area of the final year of his life. Of course, the next April he's going to be crucified. So picture that. In verse 24 in Mark 7 says, "And when he had entered a house, he wanted no one to know of it, yet he could not escape notice." So he's very approachable, and people seek him out even when he's trying to hide. He can't hide. It's like this very famous person today. They can't, you hear about movie stars or maybe people running for president or whatever. I mean, they can't just walk in anywhere without being noticed. They can go to some obscure place, and even there, people are going to know who they are. And that's how popular Jesus was. He was known throughout that region because of his miracles and teaching and all of the excitement. Even when he gets out of Galilee and goes into the land of the Phoenicians, there's excitement, and people know about who he is. So his fame has spread, as Matthew chapter 4 and verse 24 says, even into the areas of Syria. People were bringing their sick to Jesus down, seeking him out. So people knew about him in all these regions. But we're told here about one particular person that interrupts his privacy and causes a big disturbance and a lot of attention, and that is this mother whose daughter is demon-possessed. And she hears about Jesus being there and comes to him and will not be turned away until she gets some help for her daughter. And because of all the commotion evidently caused by her, Jesus is going to have to withdraw even further to the north to try to get some rest and retirement and private time with his apostles in order to teach them. So this shows a picture for us of how much commotion there was in the Lord's life and how much attention he got, just how, and I can imagine it being the same way now. If there was someone going around that could heal all the sick, all the paralyzed, all the deaf, how much excitement would there be? He couldn't go anywhere. There wouldn't be a crowd of people trying to seek him out. So we're told about the woman then in Matthew 15:22, and a Canaanite woman from the region came out and began to cry out, saying, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." And then in Mark's account, but after hearing of him, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately came and fell at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of the Syro-Phoenician race, and she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. See how independent these accounts are? They're not, certainly not just copied word from each other. They're totally independent in the way that they tell the story. And she is a Canaanite woman. There are different facts given in the two Gospels there. So she has pagan ancestry and from, that group of people that were supposed to be exterminated when Joshua came into the land, but were left alive. It says in the New American Standard here she was a Gentile. Literally, in other translations say she was a Greek. And of course, you think about the time before the New Testament was written. Alexander the Great had conquered all that part of the world. And the Greeks tried to spread their Greek culture and Greek language, and Greek became kind of the universal language of the world. And it all worked out through God's providence for the good of the gospel, that people everywhere could speak Greek. And you could write the New Testament in Greek, and people could understand the gospel no matter where they were in the Roman Empire because of the Greek language. But Greek got to be used as a synonym for a Gentile, because it's probably not, the New American Standard is showing that by translating a Gentile. If she's a foreigner, someone that's not a Jew, she's a Greek, a Gentile. And it tells us even more detail in Mark that she's Syro-Phoenician. She's partly from Syria in her background and partly Phoenician, so half and half. And even somebody that is a Canaanite. I mean, you can't get worse than that as a pagan, can you? A Canaanite and a Syro-Phoenician and a Greek, where the Jews have been fighting against this Greek culture all this time and trying to keep from getting absorbed into the Greek ways of the world. Even a Greek, they can be helped by the Lord and saved by the Lord and can come to have their faith in the Lord. You see what kind of a person she is? The gospel's for everybody. That's what this is laying the foundation. The gospel's for the whole world. It's not just for the Jews. That people that have great faith can be saved no matter what their background was in the Old Testament times. So she makes an appeal for her little daughter. She uses that expression of endearment to talk about her precious daughter. And we all have, most of us children, and we know how precious they are to us. And if there was the devil had taken control over that daughter, your little son, and was dominating and controlling their lives and making them miserable, we'd want to do anything we could to get them relief, right? We don't have actual demon possession today. That went away when the prophets and the miracles went away, when the New Testament was completed. But people are still falling under the influence, our children sometimes, of the devil, right? And how much should we want to appeal to the Lord to help us to get that influence out of their life? So there's things we can relate to in this story about the love of this mother. And she knows who to turn to help her. Her little daughter is demon-possessed, and she goes to Jesus. And she calls him by faith, Lord. Quite different than what the Pharisees were saying about him, right? They were criticizing him and rejecting him just the section before. And those zealots, they all got mad at him because he talked about eating my flesh and drinking my blood, and they all left and weren't following Jesus anymore because he had hard words for them that they couldn't receive. But this woman calls him, she's a Canaanite. And she calls him Lord. What a contrast. When somebody puts their faith in Christ, the way that they treat him and how they address him and come to him. They're not arguing with him. He's the answer. He's the son of David. Isn't that the expression for he's the Messiah? David's son was going to be the Christ. He's the one that's going to be the king and savior. And so she calls him son of David. So this woman has, even though a Canaanite, she has more understanding about who he is because of faith than the Pharisees and scribes and the zealots had about him. That she knows he's the son of David. What a woman this is in a foreign land with such a lack of opportunity in comparison to the Jews. But she's come to understand that he is the Messiah, that he's the Christ. And somehow or another, she saw or heard about his miracles. I don't know if she had been one of those that maybe had gone down there into Galilee to hear Jesus at some time, or she just heard the reports that came back from other people about the healings that happened, how the demons were cast out and people were healed of their sicknesses. But the word had gotten to her, and she believed the reports. That's what faith is, isn't it? You believe testimony and evidence. And she put her faith in what she heard. And she fell at his feet and worshiped him. Doesn't that show something about how she views Jesus? The better you get to know Jesus, the more confidence you have in who he is, the less you think about yourself, and the more you think about him. The closer you get and the stronger your faith becomes. These Pharisees and scribes, they don't have any, there's no bowing down to Jesus that they had to do because they didn't have faith in him. They don't believe in who he is. They haven't gotten close to him. This woman believes he is the Son of God, the one that's got the power to help her child. And she comes to him and bows down and worships before him. And certainly that ought to be what happens to all of us. The closer we get to Christ, the more we understand what he can do for us. The less we think about us ourselves, and the more humble we become and willing to bow down to him. In verse 23, we have the reaction of the apostles. But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and implored him, saying, "Send her away, because she keeps shouting at us." So Jesus doesn't say anything to her. Just ignores her. And now evidently they've left the house and they're walking along the road. And she's following them along as they're trying to find a place of rest and retirement, and pleading for her daughter the whole time as she goes along behind them, annoying the disciples because she won't be quiet. And she's drawing attention from everybody that's around. And Jesus doesn't say anything to her. And you might think, well, that's kind of cold. That's not very feeling. It appears that way. But the Lord always is right? He always does the right thing. He always has the proper motive. So we know that he's not doing wrong here. He has something deeper he's trying to help the woman with than just her child and having this demon cast out. He's interested in teaching the disciples about the love they ought to have for people. He wants her to think about her soul, right? That's even more important than physical things that might happen in this life, right? Your soul is the most important. Have her to understand the need for her Savior to save her soul. So it's a test. How much does this woman trust him? How humble is she willing to be to receive her request? He just ignores it. Does the Lord seem to ignore you sometimes? It happens that way, doesn't it? When you're going through some problem and some sickness, some persecution or whatever, and you're praying to the Lord and nothing seems to be happening. Doesn't seem like he's ignoring you. It was a test for this woman. He's going to help her. If she has faith, he's going to help her. But he puts her to the test. How much does she want this? How far is she willing to go? How humble will she be to receive the Lord's help? What about you and me? Not the same thing. Doesn't the Lord test us? Maybe it's 10 years, 20 years before he answers our prayer. Are we going to wait on the Lord and humble ourselves to get what we want, or are we going to just give up and be insulted and turn our back on God? This woman didn't turn her back on the Lord. We're told about the disciples here. They certainly don't seem to have a whole lot of sympathy like they ought to, or Christian love that certainly they're going to have later. They've got some growing to do themselves. This woman is following along, shouting, she's imploring, she's annoying, and she's just kind of viewed as a nuisance. Isn't that a reproof of us if somebody is, needing some help and we view them that way? Instead of some opportunity we have to study with somebody or teach somebody or to do good, we think, oh, they're just annoying. This is annoying. Go away. I wish we could get rid of this as fast as possible so we don't have to have our life messed up any, our rest and retirement and entertainment disturbed. So there's certainly something in that we can see. We need to have love and compassion. And so do these disciples. Send her away. And Jesus then responds to her after the disciples said that and says, he answered and said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So he tells her that he's not responding to her and answering her because he has a special mission that he's on. And there's a priority to this mission that he's got to follow. And that is, he has been sent during his earthly ministry to go to the Jews and to teach them and to heal them. That's what he's been sent to by the Father. So that's why he's been refusing. It's a matter of principle. It's not, I don't feel sorry for you, or I don't hear you shouting, but I want you to know my ministry is not about the Gentiles right now. My ministry is about going to the Jews. That's what God has said. I have a limited ministry to the Jews. And it's divine wisdom that he went to the Jews first. They were the people that were prepared by the Old Testament to receive Christ, to understand who he was. They're going to be the foundation that he's going to use at the beginning of the gospel to spread the gospel to the world. He's going to start with the Jews in Jerusalem, then in Judea, then Samaria. Then he's going to take the gospel to the remotest parts of the earth. So God has a good reason for Jesus concentrating on the Jews and the gospel going to the Jews first in the beginning and then to the Gentiles. It was the best plan as God saw it for the whole world. And God takes the big view, right? And according to the big view, I've sent to the Jews and not to the Gentiles. And again, I think he's testing the woman. Someone with extraordinary faith, he's going to make an exception for, right? And she's got to demonstrate that this is an extraordinary case, that he's going to heal her, even though he's been sent to use his power for the Jews. And this woman's going to pass that test. It says, and she came and began to bow down before him, saying, Lord, help me. So you get the idea, she was back following the disciples, and now she runs around, that Jesus actually responded to her. Even though he said, I've been sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, she's not discouraged by that. It's like, well, at least he's talking to me now. And so she runs around and bows down in front of him, kind of obstructs their way. And Jesus had certainly expressed no displeasure with her. And she's going to seize this opportunity. How do you react? Now I've got the Lord's attention, at least. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. She's going to push it all the way to get an answer for what she wants. And it shows the kind of persistence and humility and determination and prayer that we ought to have when we want to get an answer. So, Lord, help me. That's very moving, isn't it? In very simple words. Help me. Well, it's not about her, right? It's really about her daughter. But see how completely we identify with our children? What's good for them is good for us. What you help me, you help my child, you help me. Help me. My daughter has got this demon in her life. And then Jesus further tells her what the situation is and tests her further. In Matthew's account, and he answered and said, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. He uses a pretty strong figure there to describe taking what is intended for the Jewish people and God's plan that they're supposed to get through Christ's ministry and then give it to her as a Gentile. In Mark 7, it says, and he said to her, let the children be satisfied first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Wow, that's pretty strong, the word dogs there. Again, it sounds heartless that he would say this kind of thing to her, but he's telling her the truth and he's testing her. You know, how much did she really want this healing? How much does she really believe in it? That she's willing to just be offended and leave the first chance she gets. A lot of people like that, aren't they? Their faith isn't much. Somebody in the church doesn't say something to them just right, and they'll just turn their back on the Lord and leave. Leave the Lord, leave the church. Here the Lord says something you could take as an insult. And it's not going to deter this woman because she wants her daughter healed, right? She wants what the Lord's got, and He's the one that's got the power to help her. She's not leaving. And that needs to be our attitude. It doesn't matter what anybody says or does. We're not leaving the Lord. He's the only one that can save our soul, only one that can get us to heaven. And we're not leaving Him. It says, with a figure of speech, you're having the meal, you're feeding your children, you don't give the food to the dogs until after the meal's over. Doesn't that kind of give you the idea that the Gentiles are going to get some food later? They're going to get the gospel too later on. But first it's got to go to the children, the Jews. Some people say he does soften this somewhat. I mean, you compare somebody to a dog, you're going to get insulted, right? And certainly the Jews would talk about Gentiles like they were dogs. They would even call them dogs. He does use a different word for dog here. He uses a word like a lap dog or a puppy or the kind of dog you have in the house, not the unclean scavenger dog out on the street. They talk about the dogs that, we do feed from the table after the meal's over and so on. So she is unclean and subordinate, and of course that is true of all of us. Aren't there songs that we sing? I know they kind of modified it in our songbook. Such a worm as I. They changed it. They don't have worm anymore in the songbook. I don't know why. They made it something else. But that's the way we should look at ourselves. We are unclean. We are the ones that need the Lord's help, and we don't even deserve it. And if we get offended by that, then the Lord can't help us. We must be poor in spirit for the Lord to help us. We need to understand our utter dependence upon Him. Well, this woman doesn't take this as an insult. She says, this is an opening for me. I'm happy to be the dog under the table. I'm happy just to get the scraps that the Lord might fall off the table and the dogs could eat. And that's the way she appeals to the Lord. And she's very sharp, this woman. So she said, yes, Lord, but even the dogs feed on the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And in Mark's account, and she answered and said to him, yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table feed on the children's crumbs. Says, I don't want all the children's bread. You got this healing power for the Jews. I just want a few crumbs. We just want a few crumbs just like the dogs would get that you might accidentally drop on the floor while you're eating. Doesn't that say something about the Lord's power as she views it? He has almighty power to heal. Why, just a little crumb would be all she would need to be able to have her daughter healed. How big did we view the Lord's power? This woman is quite something. Her confidence in the Lord. Just give me the crumbs. I don't want what belongs to the children. Just a little leftovers will be enough for me and my daughter. And Jesus said to her, O woman, your faith is great. It shall be done for you as you wish. And her daughter was healed at once. And he said to her, because of this answer, go. The demon has gone out of your daughter. So he put this woman to the test. He gave her opportunity to be offended, get her feelings hurt, to leave and not get what she really needed. But she wanted her daughter healed, and she was willing to humble herself, to beg, to, even have things that could be taken that were insulting to her or whatever. Didn't matter. She wanted her daughter healed. And she knew the Lord had the power to do it. And you certainly contrast that with the way Jesus has been treated by the Zealots and by the Pharisees and by the unbelievers over in Israel, she really does stand out. She teaches us the lesson that Jesus tried to get across to all the disciples, that we ought always to pray and not lose heart. Keep on praying, be persistent, and then the Lord will hear us and give us justice. But we've got to keep on praying. We can't be turned away. The Lord tests our faith by the trials and struggles that we go through. Look at the faith that was shown by this woman. She persisted even when the Lord was silent. She reasoned it through. Even when he hadn't spoke to her, the disciples said, "Send her away." She regarded these miracles, this priceless gift to get her daughter healed from a demon, as just crumbs from all the power that the Lord has. And she is one of those, too, that Jesus, during his lifetime, said had great faith. Isn't it something that both of them were Gentiles? You would think it would be some of these Jews that were well prepared, the children, right? But no, it was a centurion that had great faith and said, "Just say it, Lord, and my servant will be healed. You don't have to go to my house." And then this one, a Canaanite woman, had this kind of faith. So when you have faith, the Lord is going to listen. And her daughter is healed. We're told in verse 30, and going back to her home, she found the child lying on the bed, the demon having left her. So she's physically exhausted. It's kind of the picture you get of her laying on the bed, I think. And that happened when the Lord casts out demons and they tear the person and they have convulsions and the demon comes out. But the demon's gone. And it's been cast out just as Jesus said at the moment that he said it. The demon left. He has the power over the devil and all the powers of darkness. And we need to fear no one if we're with the Lord. And now she's been set free, just like he can set us all free. Well, certainly this lesson teaches us that the gospel is for all. It's for Canaanites and Greeks, Gentiles, as well as Jews. We can all, if we come to the Lord in faith, receive the blessings that he has to offer. So this story foreshadows the gospel is going to go to the whole world. After Jesus was raised from the dead, he gave the Great Commission and sent the apostles to preach the gospel to every creature. He that has believed and has been baptized shall be saved, but he that disbelieves shall be condemned. So it's the beginning of the end of all the barriers that the Old Testament law began to set up and separate Jews and Gentiles. That quickly, within a year, it's going to be done away with. And everybody will be able to come together. Faith won the blessing when you look at this story. She had love for her child, great love that caused her to receive the blessing. It moved her to seek Jesus Christ, who she had her faith in. She believed he was the son of David, the Lord, the one who could do miracles, and just a crumb of his power could save her. Had faith enough that she worshiped him and bowed down to him. She had an indomitable persistence, undiscourageable hope that he could heal that daughter. She was not going to give up. And a humble cheerfulness, willing to be compared to a dog under the table, and was cheerful to be able to be in that position and still be able to receive what she needed. And this approach is going to find answers in our life too, for the things that we need if we'll approach the Lord in this humble and persistent, faithful fashion. We can see in this that there are tests of faith that the Lord gives us. Certainly, if we're going to be saved, he's going to test our faith. Do we really believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior? And we need to believe that he was raised from the dead, that he's the Lord reigning at God's right hand. Unless you believe that, you can't be saved, no matter what the world may say. People can't rise from the dead. Jesus rose from the dead. You've got to believe that. You've got to pass that test if you're going to be forgiven of sin and go to heaven. You have to believe strongly enough that Jesus is the Son of God that you'll renounce sin and repentance in your life. You've got to be strong enough in your faith to pass the test and be willing to say with your lips, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And upon that confession, you've got to pass the test of obedience. Some people will do those things. Humble themselves to be immersed in water. It's like, no, I don't think I ought to have to do that. Well, it's a test of faith. That woman passed the test of faith. She got what she wanted. You want to be saved, you've got to submit to baptism and arise to walk in newness of life. And then you need to live faithfully. If you're here this morning and you've not obeyed the gospel of Christ, we want to encourage you to pass the test and come to the Lord and be saved. And together we stand and sing.